For a brief, dazzling moment, American cars grew wings. They served no real purpose. And yet they became the boldest symbol of an entire era. This is the rise and fall of the tail fin. It is one of the strangest stories in all of automotive history. A wild idea that took over America, then vanished almost overnight. To understand it, we have to go back to the years just after the war. A time when anything felt possible, and the future looked like chrome. Our story begins in 1948. That year, the tail fin first appeared on the Cadillac. Two small, sculpted bumps rose from the rear fenders. They were modest at first. Almost shy, but their inspiration was anything but modest. It was a fighter plane, the twin-tailed Lockheed P-38 Lightning, one of the most striking aircraft of the Second World War. With its twin booms and twin tails, it looked like nothing else in the sky. The man who fell in love with that shape was Harley Earl. Earl was General Motors' first head of design. He is often called the father of automotive styling. Before him, cars were engineered. After him, they were designed. He had joined General Motors back in the 1920s. He taught an entire generation of designers to think in sculpture. He would sculpt his ideas first in clay, long before any metal was cut. Under Earl, the company built the first true styling studio in Detroit. In the late 1930s, Earl was shown the then-secret P-38. The plane was still classified. Few civilians had ever laid eyes on it. He believed a car could carry that same sense of flight. And its shape stuck with him for years. When the war ended, that memory took form in steel. The fin was born. And America was about to fall in love. To understand why, you have to feel the mood of the times. These were the optimistic post-war years. The jet age had arrived, and the dawn of the space race was near. Rockets, jets, and speed filled every magazine and newsreel. Test pilots were breaking the sound barrier for the very first time. Silver jets streaked across posters, ashtrays, and cereal boxes alike. And to a nation looking up at the sky, fins felt like the future. Children dreamed of astronauts, and their fathers bought the closest thing on wheels. A car with fins was not just transportation. It was a rocket for the road. Through the 1950s, Detroit went to war with itself. Not with guns, but with chrome and imagination. Every automaker raced to make its fins taller and bolder. Taller, bolder, and more rocket-like with every passing year. Alongside the fins came more chrome, gleaming from every surface. Bumpers grew heavier, wrapping around the body like polished armor. And more horsepower, roaring under longer and longer hoods. Engines swelled past 300 horsepower and kept on climbing. And crucially, this fever did not stay with Cadillac alone. Chrysler, Ford, and the smaller makers all grew fins of their own. Plymouth, Dodge, and Chevrolet joined the race, each chasing the rest. Soon almost every driveway in America held a set of fins. What began as one company's flourish had become a national obsession. Each new model tried to outdazzle the last. A fin that was breathtaking one autumn looked tame by the next. Showrooms glittered like something out of a science fiction film. This was styling as spectacle. Design as pure theater. But here is the secret at the heart of the tail fin. The fins were not about function. They were about feeling. They did not make a car faster, or safer, or easier to drive. Engineers quietly admitted they gave no real advantage in the win. A few claimed they added stability, but the numbers never backed it up. The fins were shaped for the eye, never for the road. What sold was an emotion. Prosperity. The sense that the good times would never end. Optimism. A belief that tomorrow would always be brighter. Speed. The thrill of motion, even while standing still. And above all, the American dream on wheels. New highways stretched out toward every horizon. Drive-in theaters glowed under warm summer nights. Diners and filling stations lined the roads like a promise of freedom. You did not just drive a finned car. You announced yourself in it. A family with a finned car had arrived. They were going places. The fin was a promise, written in steel and chrome. And that promise reached its peak in a single, unforgettable car. By 1959, the fin had been growing for more than a decade. The 1959 Cadillac Eldorado. It is the undisputed icon of the entire era. Its fins towered over everything around it. They stood nearly 42 inches off the ground, taller than a small child, rising from the back of a single car. And were tipped with rocket-style twin taillights. Bullet-shaped lamps that looked like they belonged on a spaceship. From behind, the Eldorado looked ready to blast into orbit. No car ever wore the era's ambition more proudly than this one. Nothing before it had been this bold. And nothing after it would be. The 1959 Cadillac was the fin at its absolute limit. This was the summit. The mountaintop of the tail fin era. But every mountaintop is also where the descent begins. Because 1959 was more than the peak of style. It was the peak of the excess itself. And it marked the end of Harley-Earl's long career. The father of automotive styling stepped away from General Motors. For more than 30 years, he had shaped how America saw its cars. The man who dreamed the fin left just as it reached the sky. And almost immediately, tastes began to shift. The very thing that felt like the future began to feel like too much. The turn was quiet at first. Then it came fast. Critics began to speak, and they were not kind. They called the fins gaudy. Loud for the sake of being loud. They called them wasteful. Metal and money spent on nothing. And they called them impractical. All show, no purpose. The word excess began to follow the tail fin everywhere. The public began to cool on the excess as well. What had once looked thrilling now looked like it was trying too hard. A new generation of buyers wanted something calmer and quieter. They saw the fins as the taste of their parents, not their own. Smaller, simpler imports began to catch the country's eye. The mood of the country was changing beneath the chrome. The endless optimism of the 50s was starting to settle. And the finned car suddenly felt like a relic of a passing moment. By the early 1960s, the fins began to shrink fast. What had towered now sank back toward the fenders. Even Cadillac trimmed the very wings it had once made famous. Each new year, the fins grew smaller and more restrained. Clean, straight lines began to replace the wild sculptures. And by the mid-1960s, the tail fin era was over. The last true fins faded into memory, one model year at a time. The wings that had defined a decade simply folded away. In just a handful of years, an entire style had risen and fallen. The rocket had launched, soared, and quietly come back down. And here is the twist that makes this story so strange. The fins added nothing to how a car actually drove. Not 1 mile per hour. Not 1 ounce of real usefulness. By every practical measure, they were pointless. And yet today, those finned cars are treasured. They are among the most beloved classics ever made. And among the most valuable, worth far more than when they were new. Restorers spend years returning each fin to its original shine. At auctions, the finned Cadillacs command breathtaking prices. Collectors chase them. Museums display them like sculptures. A car once mocked as wasteful is now guarded like a work of art. People who were not even alive then still adore them. And the reason is precisely why they once fell out of favor. They captured a moment of pure, unafraid optimism. A time when a nation dared to dream in chrome and rockets. The fins do not tell you how a car drove. They tell you how it felt to be alive in that decade. And that feeling is something no spec sheet can measure. Perhaps that is the strange gift of anything made purely to delight. Useless things, made with love, often outlive the practical ones. This is what makes the tail fin a perfect gasoline ghost story. A beautiful, useless, unforgettable thing. Something born not from need, but from imagination. It rose fast, climbing higher than reason should have allowed. It ruled briefly, defining an entire golden decade. And then it vanished, almost as quickly as it came. It began with a secret fighter plane and a designer's memory. It peaked with a Cadillac whose fins nearly touched the sky. And it ended with a quiet return to simple, honest lines. Few things in car history burned so brightly, or faded so fast. The fin was never meant to last. That is part of why we remember it. The tail fin was never about going anywhere. It was about believing you could go everywhere. And for one dazzling decade, America believed it completely. That is the rise and fall of the tail fin. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.